Hi, my name is Spencer Meyer, and for my presentation, I went ahead and researched the effects of breast cancer on women, both psychologically and how society treats women with breast cancer. And this originally got me interested because a lot of different campaigns try to spread awareness of breast cancer, but you don't really hear that about other cancers as much. You don't hear a lot about prostate cancer or melanoma or skin cancer. Like you hear them when they're advertised for different sunscreen products, but you really don't hear a whole lot about the disease itself. But breast cancer, you see a lot of different products throughout the marketplace, as I'm going to discuss, in comparison to other cancers and diseases. And because I used to work at Kohl's, and we used to sell we had a whole section devoted to Susan G. Komen products that were trying to raise money for breast cancer, and they were all pink. And being a women's studies minor, this brought some attention to me, and just being somebody that works there, I was like, why did they just make all these products pink and we're trying to raise money for breast cancer? And so the National Cancer Institute says that in 2001, approximately 2,500, almost 25, or 250,000, so a quarter of a million people will develop breast cancer. And that's a large number. And there are other diseases other cancers that have considerable amount of people that will develop them in 2001 as well. And so this is a disease that does need awareness brought to it. And so it is good that a lot of people are hearing about it. But it's just the ways that they're hearing about it and the implications those have on the women with breast cancer and women in general that I'm concerned with. And so a lot of organizations, like I was talking about Susan G. Komen, and then if you were to go in, a lot of like skate shops and stuff sell wristbands that say save boobies or boobies bracelets, and it's supposed to represent it's supposed to fund breast cancer research. And then another popular one, Save the Tatas, is another large one. And this is interesting because no other organizations raising money for prostate cancer is an obvious comparison because it's a disease that more men get than women, and it's more women get breast cancer than men, so it's easy to compare the two and to see if there's any societal effects due to the gender and sex of the patient and I guess the disease in this part. And so because there's no organizations that promote penises or the like bracelets with penis on it or anything like that, like you don't really hear about it. It's just like prostate cancer, or it's not labeled with a part or like a sexual part as women's are. And a large part of the support for it is because it says boobies, and so it's kind of sexualizing this horrible cancer and disease. So instead of looking at it like we need to support all the women who are getting this and everybody with it and men, and looking in toward like a treatment or some sort of social support for women who do have breast cancer, we're sexualizing it and making it about their breasts, which takes the focus off of the people with the disorder. So we're like, oh, boobies, tatas, we need to save the part that's important for society, which is breasts, because sex sells, and we need to use that to help market our own campaigns, which is what I'm about to talk about. And so it takes the focus off of the women and the cancer itself should be focusing on, and the experiences of women instead of focusing on their breasts. And a main part of my research was an article written by Barbara. It's German. Ehrenreich, and she wrote an article called "Welcome to Cancerland," and it was really interesting because herself has had to go through the experience of breast cancer, and she ended up becoming one of the survivors, as she calls them, as the people and as society labels people who have made it through breast cancer. But of course, as we found out in this course, it never really goes away. So they've survived the treatment for now. And so what she talks about, she goes through the beginning of her experience through chemotherapy and explains society's effect on her as she went through having breast cancer and then still having breast cancer. And what she talks about is this marketplace that's created. So, like I was talking about earlier, they're compared to other cancers and disorders and diseases. It's not as aware. We're not as aware of other disorders due to this marketing campaign that's been driven for breast cancer. And through walks and different products, like I was talking about, we're seeing a lot more ways to support it, which seems like a good idea. We need to support breast cancer and research, but it's turned into this like capitalistic model that they're using to market their own products, so people will buy their products instead of supporting breast cancer. And so we're starting to see on shelves like different like strainers, like the kitchen products. So we're using a lot of kitchen products, which could be a whole nother speech about how women are trying to support other women and we're having women in the kitchen cooking, but we're not going to talk about that. It's just one example of one product, kitchen appliances and products that we've turned and colored pink, which society has been used to brand women and femininity, and so we're coloring these products pink and selling it to people. So instead of focusing on the disease, we're focusing on these different products and we're branding it this real feminine cancer when under the microscope, I'm sure cancer isn't all pink, or if it is, I'm sure it's purely coincidental. And so that's not, it's shifting the focus, like say the Tatas, is away from the woman's experience and branding it with this gendered color. And so another thing she noticed is after when she was in the hospital and when she went to these hospitals and visited people with breast cancer, she found that they're given these beauty baskets after they've gone through chemotherapy. And as we know and as we've learned, and if you know anybody with cancer, chemo, or who's gone through chemotherapy, it has a pretty drastic effect on your overall well-being, and it takes a lot of energy out of you, and you get sick, and some people lose their hair, and you look really tired, and it just takes a lot out of you. So we're worried about these women getting breast cancer of not looking like women because we expect women in society to wear makeup and dress up for men and to compare themselves to other women in society. And so we give them these gift baskets who are also who incidentally are sponsored by the same companies that are selling these breast cancer products, um, like JCPenney and a lot of makeup companies put together these gift baskets to give people with breast cancer so women won't lose their femininity and become these patients who look ugly as society has labeled these patients. And so it's sort of created a double standard because men, after they've gone through their surgeries, aren't brought in like power tools and matchbox racing cars or anything like that. It's just, oh, you're done with chemotherapy, like, leave now. This is what you're here for. It's, oh, here's this gift basket to make you like go put the makeup on before you leave so you can look prettier and try to feel normal, even though these women are going through everything but normal lives. And so the last thing I'm sure they're worried about after throwing up at home and not being able to eat is how they look. And so they're instead of we're giving women these beauty products to make sure they continue their same level of femininity, whereas compared to men with prostate cancer, there isn't that expectation. And having to go even more into that, my father had melanoma, and although it's not prostate or breast cancer, it's still a cancer that's pretty serious, as only 5% of the population who develops skin cancer usually has melanoma, and it's considered to be a more serious form of skin cancer. So, being a family member, I was worried, but at the same time, after he had his surgery about 4 or 5 years ago, um, I remember, and as I was talking to him during the interview the other day, there wasn't when he finished melanoma, his surgery and getting it removed, and luckily it hadn't metastasized. Um, he became better, but he there was no waiting room with gift baskets or flowers. Like we brought him flowers, but there wasn't like power tools, or like the hospital didn't give him a gift basket like these women with breast cancer were given. And so it really makes you think about what's going on and why we need to continue giving women with breast cancer like all of these beauty products. And so and another thing that struck my attention in her paper that she published is that women with breast cancer, and she says like a lot of other disorders, that when they find out they have cancer, the medical community really it really has a psychological effect on them after they've been diagnosed with cancer, because they're referred to and become put in a role of a patient, and instead of being somebody um, with a disorder, they become that disorder or disease, or the cancer, as she puts it. And so she feels like instead of being Barbara, she becomes she becomes breast cancer. So she loses her identity and becomes a statistic. And so, because the doctors begin working against this disorder and trying to figure out how to stop the disorder instead of working with the actual patient, so her identity becomes lost to this disorder, and like a lot of the other women with breast cancer, she loses her identity. And so it would be more helpful, she says, if it would be more personal, and society and a lot of the marketing campaigns, instead of addressing like breast cancer, we start examining the women's experiences that they're going through. And we should also do it with a lot of other cancers, instead of just singling out um, women with buying power and advertising to them in the marketplace, because she found out that a lot of the cost that goes into those campaigns, the companies make a lot of money off of the advertising for it, so the total contribution that ends up going toward actually breast cancer research is very minimal, and so it's made to seem as if most, or if not all, of your money purchasing for example, the strainer goes toward breast cancer research, which is shown to be false. And so it's misleading for a lot of shoppers. And so she feels like that, paired with the like femininity that women are supposed to keep up, and with a lot of the gift baskets that are given, that they're made to address breast cancer and women in general instead of her own experience. And so if they were to advertise, like, for example, let's say like the throwing up and the balding and the actual real life implications of breast cancer, instead of this romanticized vision of what breast cancer is, and like this pink world where butterflies and ribbons are flying everywhere. Like that's really unrealistic, and that's not what's happening. And so overall, what I learned from this research and from this project is that women are subjected to a lot of different experiences from this cancer than to men. Like I said earlier, if we were to compare to men with prostate cancer, or even to men with breast cancer, which is interesting, it's not the same experience at all. And so it shows that there is still a sexual division in society, and there's different expectations, but more specifically in this cancer, in this disease, which was really interesting because when we were going through learning about the disease, I never had like I never had any idea that society would treat two people with the same cancer differently, because we're learning about like this cancer that happens both in men and women. And although there are, as we saw, different statistics for each, and some are more at risk for certain cancers due to environmental and genetic factors, but I didn't think there was a societal component, like, to being treated after you have this cancer any differently. So it was really surprising, and I found through this research how to treat people with breast cancer, and to just treat the actual cancer, treat it as everybody equally. Like, it seems almost like, why wouldn't you do that more often? And then in society, through a lot of these marketing campaigns that are done, like Susan G. Komen and Save the Tatas and those booby bracelets, like, it's really misleading, because you think you're supporting an organization when